I'm going to tell you what CPS did to me. I hope you can hear me. So, I was being chased across the nation by douchebags, and it was a problem that no one could seem to solve. So I just had to deal with it and just keep going, which I did for over a year with my child, who I knew that they wanted. And they finally were able to take him after a year, the same way that they took him another time, which was by paying Child Protective Services and the cops to just create a scenario or make things seem some type of way. Or they themselves creating this scenario and then me being caught in the middle of a scenario that they created, like forcing me into homelessness. So, CPS does this thing where they write up in their little report that I'm being trafficked. And I kind of had already figured it out, but it wasn't until they wrote it up and told me that they were writing it in a report that I knew for sure that the people who were having me trafficked, people who were running me across the nation with my kid, were also the same people who were trying to get my kid to my family. So my family pays CPS to take my kid from me, which they do in a completely fucked up way, but I'll have to tell you about it in a different, because it's like it would be like a whole other long story as to explain to you how they did it. But, so what they did was they wrote up that I was being trafficked and they were taking my kid because I was being trafficked. And then they pretended to ask a domestic violence shelter if they would let me in, and pretended that the domestic violence shelter said no, or something like that. And they just left me on the streets. They just they left me in a hotel room, but the hotel room was supposed to be gone in a couple days, and then I was just fucked after that. So then I was walking around with all my stuff and with all my kids' stuff, but without my kid, and I was an even bigger target than I was before. And they would have hearings once in a while, and they'd told me to talk to my kid a few times a week on the phone and stuff like that. But, they never drug tested me or anything. They didn't work up any kind of plan. They didn't do anything. They just kept having hearings that I kept showing up to, which is something that happened in the last one too. They would just keep having these hearings, but they wouldn't actually do anything during the hearings. They wouldn't actually accomplish anything or do anything. It was just bullshit. It was just bullshit. They literally waited until they would wait until my phone got shut off. If I was being kept somewhere, or if I got robbed, or if I was just out on the streets because I'm fucking homeless, because I'm being trafficked by my siblings and my family and stuff. But I still did as much as I could to maintain a phone. There were times that it did get really frustrating, because here I am, people know I'm trying to maintain a phone for my kid, and they would steal my phones. And it would take a lot of different people to orchestrate them stealing my phones, because people don't just naturally want to steal from me, and I don't hang out with people or in places where people are going to steal from me. You know what I mean? it's like only them that do those things because they want those items that I have. And they'll take my phones and hack into my accounts and hack my bank accounts and all that, which they already had. But anyways, so I end up basically getting trafficked all around the U.S. and having to run from these people all over the U.S. Yes, they were trying to sex traffic me, but I wasn't into it. And I, for the most part, was just like, no about all that. And it was like 5,000 people that they sent to me to ask me to do stuff that I had to say no to. And like, I could hardly, like, just wasn't ever able to get away from that network of people all over the U.S. that they have under their belt to work for them, to have people trafficked and shit like that, to have people picked up and watched and monitored and fucked with. So anyways, they carried this shit on for a couple years. And at one point they told me to just stop calling my kid. And then after I I even tried to call him for like 6 to 9 months, this went on, where they didn't let me talk to my kid at all. And then they told me that they had a hearing, and just decided that he was going to go to my sister, who he's never even met, because she is part of a murder for hire campaign against me, and she would have never shown her face. She doesn't, that I know of, even have any kids, nor does she have the ability to have kids, which I have no opinion about at all. It has nothing to do with me, nor would I ever judge something like that. But anyways, so this bitch who has had me stalked and harassed and poisoned and tortured, who moved into apartments around me in the state that I lived in, 1,500 miles away from her home state. She was moving into apartments around me and not letting me know about it, and sending people into my apartment and having people do like all kinds of weird shit because they fucking stole my inheritance and properties and shit like that, right? So 5 years this goes on of them taking my kid, and then like CPS had to give him back the first time, and then they did that thing where they followed me across the nation, took him the second time, and I've just been out here for like nearly a couple years now, and they waited until I didn't have a phone 2 different times to adopt him out to my sister. And the first time they acted like they weren't going to, and that they like changed it. And then the second time they just did it. And I was like, man, every single trial and hearing that we had, that they would bring up my sister. And I was like, why are they bringing up my sister? Like, she's got to be the one behind this, paying everybody to do this. Well, come to find out, CPS tells me that the father of my kid isn't who I thought that my kid's dad was. It wasn't the guy that I was with at the time, which was this dumbass named Tim. And so the CPS judge, she tells me that my son's DNA says that his parents are siblings, are brother and sister. And at first I think that they are just like BSing me. I thought that they were like just like trying to like do something or say something to like be mean or to belittle me, because that's what I'm so used to people doing. They didn't really go out of their way to emphasize what they were saying. Like, they didn't ask me any questions about it. And so like, it took me a little while to realize that my sister is married to some brother that I didn't know I had, and that they got me pregnant without my knowledge, and that they had this fucking Tim guy pretend that it was his baby the whole time. They paid the hospitals and the family courts in multiple states to like pretend that this Tim dude was the kid's dad and take his rights and all that shit. And like, oh, now I'm supposed to be a single mom and no one's the dad and no one has to pay child support because their rights were taken. No one has to be held accountable for being a fucking dad. And I asked them like more than once, I was like, you guys can't give me the name of my son's father. You guys can't like reveal to me my son's dad, like what his name is or anything. And they refused to do it the entire time. They refused to tell me who my own child's dad is, even though they gave him a DNA test. They left me on the streets to be trafficked by the same people that my kid is being like sold to or whatever. Like, no one is addressing the fact that the child is a product of grapes to begin with. Everyone is just sweeping that under the rug. No one is addressing the fact that the kid is being sent to a woman who is a trafficker and I've heard makes CP. Like, I am not even sure what my real name is. Like, there are so many things that needed to be addressed in this situation, and no one gave a fuck. No one gave a fuck. They just left me out here on the fucking streets. For years, I've been out here like this. Like, it's really bad, and like, I really miss my kid, like, really bad. Like, I've worked 5 years. I got him back once, and then they did the same shit to me again. And I have been, like, out here, like, sure, I smoke some weed. Dude, I don't drink. I don't use any hard stuff. Like, I don't party. I don't stay up late. I mean, like, unless I'm on the internet for a second or whatever. But, like, I really take care of my health because even though everyone wants me to just be on the streets and die, like, I am a mom. I miss my kids. I'm staying in the best condition that I can with the situation that I'm in. Like, because I want to be with my kids again. I want to continue to be there for them. I don't want to be what everyone else wants me to be, which is just like some street person who just doesn't give a shit, who her kids were taken and her whole life was taken by pieces of shit. And so what is there left to live for? That's not, like, that's how I feel like everyone wants me to be about this. And that's not how I feel about it at all. I feel like they're wrong and that we can outweigh each other all we want, but I'm not going to die out here for anybody. I'm not going to become a drug addict for you so that you can say that I'm on drugs and that that's the reason why you take my kid. I'm not a prostitute, nor have I ever been a prostitute. So you're not going to be able to use that as an excuse. You literally wrote up in the report that you were taking my kid because I was being trafficked. And you got no help from me whatsoever. And I was being trafficked and abused and stalked aggressively by my family, which constituted a domestic violence situation. So you could have just put us in a domestic violence shelter, but instead you chose to kidnap my kid, to send him to traffickers, and you left me just out here. And I've had a couple different lawyers. I haven't had proper legal representation the entire time. Like, I had to file complaints to the boards, to the, what's it called? To the fucking legal board. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, about both of the lawyers that they gave me. And, like, they were like, oh, we're going to give you a different lawyer, right? They're like, do you want to represent yourself or do you want this other lawyer? And I almost said represent myself, but I chose the other lawyer. Well, I called and a couple months went by before they gave me a new lawyer. And as soon as they did, by the time that I actually called her and talked to her, which was in like, it was like I called, they said that I didn't have an attorney for two different hearings, that no one told me, you know what I mean? That no one told me that were even happening. And, it's just like, if I were to take any of you parents and just push you out onto the streets and you don't have any assistance at all, you think if you didn't have any assistance, you didn't have any friends, you couldn't go back to anyone you'd ever known in your entire life. You couldn't speak to your family. You don't have a car. You don't have any money. You have absolutely nothing. And you have to just run the entire time. You just have to keep going because everywhere you go, this network of losers fucks with you. And you just have to keep going and 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 keep going. The only way that I even get money is if people pull up and hand it to me. Like I hold a cardboard sign sometimes to get money. That's what it's come down to. I have been reduced to a homeless beggar on the streets. I would be in way worse condition than I am now if I had been using drugs and alcohol and getting banged out the way everybody wanted me to. Anyways, it's something that's been dragged out for a really long time. And I heard that the first 2.5 years that they had my kid, that the reason why they wouldn't give them back for that long was because they had cameras in my apartment and they were live streaming me to the dark web and on OnlyFans. So it's been a trafficking situation for a very long time. And Child Protective Services, the family court judges, and cops have all been involved in it. It's really lousy. And I've stayed out here and I've stayed alive through all this stuff. Hoping, I stayed alive so that my kid wouldn't go to sex traffickers who make snuff films with animals and everyone else. And they sent him there anyways. He's already gone to visit them for Christmas, and they're talking about just sending him to live with them, saying that they adopted him out already. Right now I'm in a place where I don't have access to internet yet, but I'm going to try to get this uploaded tomorrow. Unless I watch it and I feel goofy, and then I'll just delete it, which I mostly do. Where'd you put the lighter? That's not all they did, but it gives you some kind of idea. I'm really tired of being out here, and I really miss my kids.